Hey guys, welcome back to Foreign Reacts. Today we're going to be checking out a really interesting video. This one is titled Culture Shock, Going to the Doctor in France versus USA French Healthcare System. Well, it didn't say system, but said French healthcare. So a lot of you guys have been requesting for me to do French reaction videos, and I'm trying my best to get as much done as possible. So if you have any suggestions, leave those in the comment section down below, and I'll try to get back to that as soon as possible. I do want to say the person who is in this video, I reached out to them already asking for permission to do this reaction video. Unfortunately, no responses yet, but I'm doing the reaction video in hopes that, eventually they'll respond. But if you ever see this video and you don't want it on YouTube, just hit me up in the email that is in the description, and the video is gone. But either ways, we're going to check out your video, and I really am excited to hear these culture shocks. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
Yeah, I'm there butt naked except for my socks on an exam table after the doctor was like right next to me as I undressed, and it just wasn't what I expected. If you find yourself sick in France, in need of medical attention, or just curious about what it's like going to the doctor in France, keep on watching to learn what to expect at doctor's appointments in France and how they might differ from what you're used to in the US.
Okay.
Bonjour tout le monde, I'm Diane. I'm an American who's lived in France since 2012, and here on this channel, we talk about everyday French life and beyond. And in addition, I also blog over at weinfrance.com. It's a living abroad lifestyle blog, and I'd love for you to check that out if the written word is more your thing. Let's get right into today's video, all about differences you might encounter when going to the doctor in France. And my reference point is always how things are in the US, since I'm American, but my intention with this video is to give you some insight into what things are like, to help ease any surprises, and just to let you know what to expect. Because what always surprises me the most about going to a doctor in France or any foreign country, it's just kind of the uneasiness. What catches me off guard and can add to the stress, to the frustration, the awkwardness, is just being unprepared. So to that end, I'm going to try to prepare you with a few little things that are different about going to the doctor in France. So here's my quick disclaimer. Of course, what follows here in this video, it's my personal experience, and not every single doctor at every single place in France is going to have things as I describe them in this video. It's the way things are done overall, generally, in my experience, but there are always exceptions, all right? And it's also not a comprehensive list, or this video would be 5 hours long. So with that, let's get into it with number one. Okay, the price.
The price.
In France, a visit to your general GP, your general practitioner, will run you currently 25 euros, and that fee is standardized nationwide. And you pay that doctor directly in person at the end of your visit. You don't get billed later. And you could pay sometimes cash, check, or credit card, but not all offices are equipped to take cards, so just make sure that you have another method of payment. If you have a French insurance card, the carte vitale, it's a green card, you'll be able to show that, and then you'll be reimbursed about 70% through the Sécu, and that's France's social security system. And then also you'll have supplementary insurance in most cases. That's called a mutuelle, and you'll be reimbursed even more. Now, if you're a tourist in France and you need to see a doctor, that's fine. Just make an appointment and you'll pay that 25 euros just like a French person, except you won't be reimbursed unless maybe you have a travel insurance.
I like that.
You're not living here paying into the system like a citizen or permanent resident would. Now, keep in mind specialists do charge more beyond the 25 euros that a GP would charge. And if they're non-conventionné, they can charge even more. But still, the point I want to make is that costs are clearly outlined ahead of time. For me, in the US, it was always a guessing game, trying to figure out what the doctor's visit would cost. And that was always the easy part. Then it was like, is the insurance going to cover it? Do I just pay my copay at the end? Will I be billed? How much? And even for blood work in France at a lab, you can always ask what each test will cost up front, and they'll be able to tell you that. Next up is the waiting room. So doctors' waiting rooms in France tend to be very simple, with chairs lined up against the wall in a way that allows everyone in the room to see who's coming in and out of the room. And when you first get to this waiting room, always be sure to greet the other patients in the waiting room when you arrive. So don't just run in and try to take a chair in the corner without anyone seeing you. It's really important in France that you see people, that you acknowledge them. So even if you say a simple bonjour, make sure you say that before you just sit down. Always acknowledge them.
That's definitely, from comparing to America, I would honestly say that in America, you're likely going to greet somebody if you enter into a facility or a building and you see somebody, a group of people, and you're going to that same exact spot. I think you're going to definitely greet that person. I just think that's a normal, common thing to do in America, just to greet everybody, I think. But Finland, I'm in Finland right now. I don't think that is anything that you would actually do unless you know that person at all, you know?
People already in the room. Politeness is huge, and I made a whole video on why bonjour is a must. Now, when it's time for your appointment, the doctor will personally come and get you out of the waiting room. They'll just call your name when it's your turn, normal, but something to note is that, in my experience, GPs pretty much work alone, aside from a secretary, especially in small practices or just when it's just them. So you won't be greeted by a nurse or a medical assistant who will first invite you in to check your vitals, get your history before seeing the doctor. It's the doctor himself or herself that will normally come get you from the waiting room. So, here's a funny story. Be aware that French GPs don't generally wear white doctor's coats or a suit or, with a stethoscope around their neck. They might just be in regular plain clothes, And so don't do what I did at my first medical visit in France and be like, hi, wait, are you the doctor? Kind of unsure of who this casual man was in front of me calling my name with, a polo shirt unbuttoned in his chest hair and a little cross necklace, and just jeans. It was different for me. So I didn't realize that the doctor was dressed down. And I learned my lesson. Now I know. But yeah, if someone comes and calls your name, whatever you think a doctor should or shouldn't look like, just act accordingly and assume this person is the doctor.
Makes sense.
Okay, and just a quick note before we move on to number 3. In my last video about the pros and cons of living in France as a foreigner, I mentioned a French brand that I loved while I was talking about making a list. It's Rhodia. They make amazing notebooks, and I actually realized I have an extra one on my shelf, and I would love to give it away to you. So if you'd like to win a Rhodia notebook, I'll put the picture up here. Just stick around to the end, and I'll give you just some quick notes on how to enter that giveaway. So stick around. And I also have things I love segment, my new segment where I tell you about, something that I love at the end. But we're going to continue right on with number 3 here, my differences.
Right.
This is a big one, and it's no nurse is usually present during exams. And this is one that majorly caught me off guard the first time I saw a gynecologist in France. It was just the doctor and me alone in an exam room, which was different than what I was used to. And it just made me a little uneasy because if anything strange happened, it would be my word against the doctor's, and that wasn't something that I was used to.
I think.
I got really.
I think professionalism is a real thing when it comes to Europe. Personally, for me, yes, I'm still gonna have my doubts and my thoughts because trust no one is just the motto. But I do think professionalism is a real thing in Europe. I think it's little to, it's really, that's what I think. I've not really had that experience, but that's what I probably think. It's really uncommon to have like a doctor being unprofessional, doing things they're not supposed to do.
Comfortable in the US knowing there was always a third party in the room for more sensitive exams, so maybe a nurse or a medical assistant at the gynecologist's office, and that's for the doctor's protection and also the patient's. And I find that in the US, an assistant of some sort, a third party, is often present for doctors who are the opposite sex of the patients. But in France, that's really not the case, and this always put me at ease in the US, just knowing there was someone else there for the protection of all involved, In France, I've never encountered a third party present, and I wouldn't say it never happens here. Again, it's just my experience, but it's certainly not common in France. So be aware that it's most likely going to be you and the doctor. All right, next up is nudity. So sticking with the gynecologist for a moment and kind of adding to my unease is this next point. Let's just talk about how the exam's conducted. So I was majorly surprised when it was time for my, pelvic exam, and The doctor didn't leave the room for me to undress. I mean, they weren't gawking at me or anything. They were just doing paperwork at their desk. But she didn't give me a gown either, a paper gown of any kind, or a
Nothing.
covering over my pelvic area to kind of drape over yourself, during the exam. In the U.S., I was always given some type of gown or like a draping. It gets cold, right? So yeah, I'm there butt naked except for my socks on an exam table after the doctor was like right next to me as I undressed. And it just wasn't what I expected. And it made an awkward exam even less pleasant because I didn't know. And medical nudity in France is a thing that I find very different.
I think, let me tell you, from my standpoint, from my, loving the difference, finding out people are not from here or whatever, just the fact that you hear somebody speaking differently or looks differently, sounds differently, acts differently, I think it's really important to enlighten that person. It doesn't matter if you come off as annoying. I think it's really important to enlighten that person about how things are done in your place compared to what they are probably used to, because to assume they know is a tough one, because like she said, it made it really uncomfortable. And I'm telling you, I don't know if there are any women in this world who would love to go to a gynecologist, right? Just imagine not knowing or knowing what to expect when you're at the gynecologist. That's tough.
Just be aware. And in addition to the gynecologist, when I first arrived in France, most of us were required to get a chest x-ray. And during that appointment, I was kind of like paraded through the back area of the imaging center, completely topless, like this, no gown or anything, while they moved me from, the intake room to the x-ray area. And there were, doctors of both sexes in that back area. And, they didn't even care, that I was there. I was just another person. But it was different than what I was used to, and I felt exposed. So just something to know so you know what to expect. And now, I bring a sweater, some type of shawl that doesn't change the exam, doesn't hinder what the doctor's doing. And, it's just something that makes me feel more comfortable to put around my shoulders. And you could easily do this if you're easily cold, or it would be off-putting to you to be completely nude and uncovered. And I want to be clear here that nudity in general, it's not a problem. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying, or that what they do in France is wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all.
I got
I'm not
you,
a
man.
prude when it comes to nudity like that. I'm not embarrassed by my own nudity or anyone else's. So it's not that. And of course, doctors need to see you without clothes to properly examine you in these situations. But my issues are the following. One, as I've said several times, I just didn't know what to expect. I wasn't expecting to, strip down completely without a gown in the presence of the doctor, to not be covered. So it just kind of caught me off guard. And two, I didn't realize it would be just me and the doctor, no nurse. So that's something to take into consideration. It can just, again, add another level of awkwardness. And then the last part, I think maybe this is what makes it so awkward. The doctor's in a position of power and control. They're the one examining you. And the nudity, I feel like it creates even a greater power differential, and it can be really awkward when you're there butt naked with no sense of, modesty granted. And
I get it. I totally understand her point. Like I'm not even trying to hold it, bro. I totally get her point.
you feel even more vulnerable. So that's it. The nudity is not the issue. It's just I didn't know what to expect, and it caught me off guard, caught me by surprise. Okay, next is sometimes you'll pick up your own vaccine or other prescription for a medical appointment yourself. It's not provided for you once you get to the medical center. So my advice here is to always read everything on your prescription, because it might not be what you expect. And just to give you an example, I looked briefly at a prescription for blood work from my ophthalmologist when seeing a new eye doctor and getting a full exam, and he just wanted some recent blood work. So I went and got the blood work, no big deal. Brought that with me to my next exam, and then it was time to get those eye drops in your eyes where they dilate your pupils and they look behind your eye. And he's like, okay, and where are your drops? And I said, I don't know, what drops? And he said, oh, on your prescription, it was written, bring the drops, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I totally overlooked the part underneath that required me to go to the pharmacy ahead of time to get the special drops for myself before that next appointment. And that's because in the US, whenever I would go to the ophthalmologist, they would just have the drops on hand. It wasn't my responsibility to pick them up. So I didn't even think to look at the prescription beyond the blood work and look at the 2 lines underneath. It was just a simple thing I overlooked, and I've learned my lesson. All right, next up is urgent care centers. And in the USA, it's quite common to see for-profit franchises, usually privately owned in strip malls or other shopping centers. I'll put one up on the screen here. And they're very, very common in the US. They usually have convenient hours, they have emergency medicine, physician staff, and they're perfect for when you need to see a doctor for something urgent, but not an emergency, or if you're in an area far away from home and your GP isn't there, but it's not a full-blown emergency. They have x-ray machines and that sort of thing.
Little baby stuff.
In France, they don't have urgent care centers like this. To clarify, yes, France has emergency rooms. You can get care for urgent situations. And there are doctors who can see you. In the emergency room or trauma center, you have an accident, you go to one of those. You will be seen, absolutely. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the really common urgent care centers, the walk-in centers that you could find in so many areas of the USA, cities and suburbs, that provide that ambulatory care outside of a traditional hospital setting.
Right.
Now for the Things I Love segment. It's my new segment where I share, quite simply, something I love.
Things I love. No, I'm gonna cap that out. But her video was really interesting. It was very enlightening. What to expect when you go to French healthcare center. It was really important to actually learn these things because, just moving to France, like I said this before, like I still, hate the fact that there is not a lot of information regarding Finland on the internet. Like there's just not enough. Like when you search for Finland and people who've moved here, they don't put the important things out there that you should do. And that's the reason why I'm going to make sure that I do that on the other channel that I have, because it's important to enlighten these folks and let these folks know what to expect when they come to a particular country, because it's really important. Because like she did here, it was really, really, really good, because I can promise you, if I went to a doctor, I would not be expecting the nudity and them just being comfortably just looking at me. Like it's not something normal. Like you're expecting a little gown, a little, like she said, you know what I'm trying to say? So I definitely understand her POV, and I'm happy to watch this video. But that's going to be it, guys. Like I said, if you guys want to recommend your French videos for me to check out, leave those in the comment section down below. I'll definitely get back to those as soon as possible. But either ways, guys, I'm out of here. Peace.